deceptive, manipulative.
Is also a former social worker and a political campaign activist.
Some people in town say the base is run by aliens working with our federal government to conduct mind control and genetic experiments.
I'm leaving. I'm glad. Thanks a lot, society, for railroading my ass.
Welcome to our very first podcast. You are listening to the Eerie Americas. My name is Kristi Hull.
I'm Vicky Ayala.
So we are two friends for over a decade, and we've had a obsession, and that's a very...
Putting it very lightly, obsession. Just like the nicer word for it.
Right, absolutely. We've had an obsession with serial killers, with unsolved mysteries,
paranormal, alien abduction,
basically anything that you're like, what the hell is going on? That's what we want to talk about. So that's kind of our style on this show. Listener discretion is advised. As this show, we're going to be discussing murder, and you know, maybe if your kid is listening, we might give them a nightmare or two, or her. So
we get into gory details.
We will go into details. So
let them listen, especially before.
And if you are somebody that is highly anxious, we highly recommend that you take this in stride and see how you feel. We are going to try to keep it as light as possible while respecting the victims and the situation and the circumstances. And we've decided to call this the Eerie Americas because as we were doing our research, we kind of realized that crazy stuff not only happens in the United States, because, you know, all these serial killers you always hear about from America, United States. We're looking around, and also we have Latin backgrounds, so know our crazy stories and our country is, and crazy things have come from all over the place. So we decided to condense it down to the Americas. So for those who will one day email us or call us when we're talking about a Canadian serial killer or a weird ritual from Trinidad and Tobago, or
why are you covering Peru?
We don't want an email saying, oh, why are you guys covering, and you guys are the Eerie Americas. We are just going to give you a very general Wikipedia definition of what the Americas is. So by definition, according to Wikipedia, it is
the almighty Wikipedia.
Yes. Because, you know, it's 100% always accurate.
If it's on Wikipedia, it's true.
It's real, you know, according to The Office anyway. Oh, by the way, if you're not Office fans, you're not going to like the show.
And if you get easily offended, you're not going to like the show because we joke around a lot.
Yeah.
Even when talking about murder.
Yeah. And we fucking curse like sailors. So we're just giving you the heads up right now.
We just lost all our listeners.
All right.
Bye, guys.
Thank you, outer space.
This is our first and last episode. Bye.
Is there anybody out there?
Oh, eerie music here.
So the Americas is comprise the totality of continents of North and South America. Together, they make up most of the land in Earth's Western Hemisphere and comprise the New World. So that includes 35 countries. These are multiple languages. There's all these different wonderful things that you can learn to Wikipedia if you're awful at geography, which you should be ashamed of yourself because you should have a general sense of the world map. But these are some of the countries that would be included in this. So we have, obviously, the United States.
We have Canada.
Of course.
Mexico.
Peru.
Anything in South America. Guyana, Trinidad and Tobago.
My country, Dominican Republic.
Well, then we're going to mention my country, Colombia.
Woo. Jamaica.
Nicaragua, Panama.
St. Bartholomew.
And remember that the U.S. also includes the U.S. Virgin Islands and other U.S. territories. So don't ask us why we're covering Puerto Rico when it's not a country. Because it belongs to the U.S.
We will occasionally maybe bring this up again just to ensure that...
Just because I'm sure someone is still going to ask why we're covering Canada. So we'll cover it again. But as long as we're getting questions, it means you were semi-listening. So we welcome questions.
Good
Please
news.
don't just stop listening.
Good stuff, man. So, Vicky, question for you. When did your obsession, quote unquote, there has to be a larger, we just aren't
We're going to find out the word for beyond obsession.
When did your obsession begin?
This is a good question because I was actually trying to figure that out myself recently because nobody else in my family is really obsessed. But with talking to my mother and my sister, and something I vaguely remember that happened when I was 4, I was living in a building in Brooklyn, where we come from. We're going to shout out Brooklyn a lot. So we were living in a building, and there was a deaf couple that lived upstairs. Not a couple, but there were some friends that lived upstairs. And they had a party, and there was a lot of drugs, there was some cocaine, and one of them, apparently in like a crazy cocaine rage, killed his other roommate in a bathtub. And then he goes into the bedroom
and stabs 2 people sleeping in their beds, and they survive.
Then one of the other people at the party knocked on my aunt's door. My aunt was too scared to look, so knocked on our door. And I know that my dad and my mom went upstairs to check, and my sister, because she's 10 years older than me. And I was too young to go, obviously, but I remember the blood. Because blood has a very distinct smell. That's what I remember. So I remember this situation, and I kind of thought I made it up. And then when I talked to my mom when we were talking about starting this podcast, she was like, yeah, that totally happened. And then I looked it up, and there's an article about it. So I think it started when I was 4 and almost accidentally walked into a murder scene.
Wow, that's really creepy. Maybe that has something to do with your whole I want to be a nurse thing. So your blood.
I am not grossed out by blood or brains or guts.
By the way, Vicky's hella smart. She's going to be an OR nurse in between.
Oh, now I have to do it because you said it on the podcast.
I'm taking time, or she's taking her precious time studying to do a podcast so we can discuss murder. So yeah, that's our life now. So I think for me, how it began actually, weirdly enough, I've always had a slight interest because growing up, my mom loved like crime. We were in the 90s, so there was no, what do you mean you monitor what your kids watch? What do you mean she loves like Criminal Minds. Like she's always been obsessed with that. So I grew up watching that. Even if I wasn't watching, it was in the background. So I think, but the definitive moment where I was like, whoa, this like crazy stuff happens was actually, I was about to be 13, living in Dominican Republic. I lived there on and off through my childhood. And we lived where we faced a major parkway. It wasn't quite a highway, but it's huge. Like it's kind of the entrance to like the belt. That's kind of how like extensive it is.
Which
so
if you know Brooklyn, you know we only have one highway.
Yeah,
anyway,
exactly.
So.
And so it's kind of like the on-ramp into the belt. And I have never experienced Brooklyn specifically. I would say it's probably about 100 yards long or in width.
Yeah, for only having one highway, it's not very wide.
Absolutely. So I'm facing where the traffic is kind of surpassing me. So I'm seeing all these cars going south, and I'm kind of facing the west. So I'm kind of watching all these cars come, and I notice a man in the kind of like, what's that area called? Like the strip where there's grass and like there's like the concrete.
A median?
Yeah, that's it. But anyway, so we're kind of crossing. So he's standing across on this barrier, and he tries to wait until all this traffic's passing, and the sun's going down, so it's getting harder for him to see. And I'm in a rocking chair because I don't know if anyone listening to this podcast knows that if you've been outside of a resort, most people hang out outside of their patios and just kind of sit in rocking chairs. So, and I'm watching this interaction, and they're all like, we're kind of faced circularly, so I have full view of everything going on. So I'm watching this, and this man crosses, and I guess he didn't see a car coming, and this car came at him going about maybe 55 miles an hour. It was just far enough because I was about 200 yards away where I didn't see like his face, but I saw blood. I saw what happened.
That's a way to get introduced to this. Yeah.
I was completely shocked, and not only was I shocked, but this is a third world country. The guy doesn't get out. He hits him and takes off, and then another car comes and hits him. So this guy's getting run over repeatedly. And at this point, I'm like, Mom, I'm freaking out. She turns around and she's like, let's call police. So they're calling the cops. I'm watching this whole thing. A motorcycle guy stops, pulls him back to the barrier, like to the little plot of land, and just drives off. So this poor guy gets off the street, run over. Somebody moves the corpse, and then just continues on with their day. And this was 1999. So this was, like it's still a fresh time, especially in Dominican Republic. It's still barbaric there in terms of the standard of living. It was insane. So the cops come, and like I asked the cops what's going to happen to this guy, and they're like, if no one claims his body, he's going to be a John Doe, and he's going to end up at a university as a cadaver. And when I thought to myself, this was a person that if they don't get claimed, he's going to become this shell experiment. Like, so it just became this really embedded thing that happened to me. And after that, I started looking into unsolved murders and unsolved this because I knew that the cops weren't going to do anything about this. You know what I mean? He got ran over repeatedly. No one stopped. There's no forensic team. This is a third world country, So it was pretty intense, and like I couldn't sleep that night. And after that, I just kind of, it fueled into, instead of me having this traumatic experience, I was curious. I wanted to know more about, the psychology, like how can you kill somebody and just take off. I couldn't sleep that night watching it happening. I can't imagine being the person that did this to somebody.
And then just goes home and they're like,
even though we are obsessed with this super gory and dark thing, I don't want people to think we're like psychotic.
We're not. We have sympathy. We're totally respectful of the victims. We're not going to idolize anybody.
I remember that body, I remember this man's face. That's how much I respect him. I'll never know his name. I never knew what happened, but I will always remember that man's face because that was like a big pivotal moment for me, and it changed who I was. And it concerned my mother because the following year I was visiting my dad. He was living in California at the time, and my stepmom, I had told her I'm super interested in this stuff now, and so she happens to be too. So she gave me all these books, like this doctor that attempted to kill his wife even though she escaped, and like it's this crazy story. So I'm reading them, I'm soaking them up on my vacation in Cali. When I fly back to the Dominican Republic, my mom finds all these books and is furious and threw them out. And to this day, I still ask her, did you throw the books out because of what it was entailing, or did you throw it out because you were mad of who gave it to me? Because
I'm gonna go with a little bit of both,
and that's
because your mom is also totally into this, so I really feel like it was who gave you the books. Like, if someone's gonna give you books on serial killers to read on vacation, it's gonna be me. And that's a total Latina mom thing.
It really, anyone that listens to this and has a Latin mom will understand this perspective. And my stepmother is not Latina, so it was a real jab, But then I come to find out that my mom has always had this obsession. I mean, I knew she liked the investigation shows. I knew she liked it on the removal. She went to medical school, which is where she has this fascination with the biology and human stuff. So I thought it was that level. But I come to find out when I'm telling her about this podcast that my mother actually wrote a killer when she was in high school. It was part of her little rebellious phase, apparently, because she was I'm a first generation here, so she was born in Dominican Republic. To them, talking about this stuff is the most anti-Catholic / Christian thing you can do. It's you can't be obsessed with these weird things. You can't talk about it. It's that whole that's disgusting. What's wrong with you? Are you crazy? It's one of those interesting things, but it's
interesting that instead of rebelling like I did, which was, normal stuff, I drank and did some drugs and scared the shit out of my mother. Your mom wrote to a murderer.
Yeah, and I'm trying to find the murderer's name. I had Googled it the other day. Gary Gilmore.
I think she secretly was
so she's
getting my obsession and she's going to write to a murderer in jail.
So she wrote to Gary Gilmore, and we'll probably talk about him on another podcast, but if you are interested, it's quite an interesting case. So he was totally guilty, by the way. I don't know why. Why write to the one guy?
She probably was like, I just want to piss off my mom, so I'm going to say hi, and you totally did it, but I'm going to say hi
And it was
anyway.
A scorned lover, and she apparently sided with him, and I'm like, wow, Mom, talk about not being a feminist,
Thanks, Mom.
And she was like, it was more about rebellion than anything. And I'm like, fair enough, so we all go through that. But anyways, this is some of the stuff we're going to talk about, but we're going to transition now. So Vicky has graciously done some extensive research on a case here, and it's an unsolved murder. So we're going to give her our best undivided attention because this will be very interesting.
That's no pressure at all. So this is the murder of Dorothy Jane Scott. Dorothy Jane was a 32-year-old single mother. She had a 4-year-old son named Sean. She lived in Stanton, California with her aunt. She was working as a secretary at a shop. It was called Swingers Psych Shop. And it was a store that her father previously owned. Didn't own it anymore, but he used to.
Is there any facts that they were swingers?
That would be so awesome.
Wouldn't it?
That would just be that would be something to find out, when you're running the family business and going through the paperwork and find out that your parents. This was in the 80s.
Oh, so this was pre-internet. So this was basically if they were swingers and they had a swinger shop, it was basically their Tinder. They could just swipe yes or no as the person walks in and be by the way, Friday, beanbag orgy.
Right? Meet us at the back of this swing.
Interesting. Anyways.
So her parents lived in Anaheim, California, which I'm guessing is close because they used to babysit a lot because she was working. One of the things that I found in this research was everybody said she worked really, really hard to support her son. The father was not involved in the life. Shock. You're going to hear my daddy issues, guys. I'm so sorry. I have daddy issues.
Shocker.
So shocked at the father. We don't need to delve into my daddy issues the very first episode.
But correction, our daddy issues.
But we're going to talk about this daddy issue because the father, was living his life in Missouri, totally ignoring the fact that he had a kid. Anyway, according to her friends, her family, and her colleagues, she was really religious and liked to stay indoors. Totally same because I don't go anywhere.
Yeah, we live in the most exciting city in the world.
And we do nothing.
And we Netflix and chill.
Every day.
And text each other about serial killers.
Every day. And the most exciting thing that I do is go to work and then go home. And so
and we have boring office jobs, by the
Oh
way.
yeah, I don't go to an exciting job where I do anything that, and I sit at a desk and I stare at my computer.
And we count the minutes to go home.
And then we text about the podcast, and I do my research because my job is boring and dead, and then I go home. So if you're not from New York or not from Brooklyn, and you're thinking that we're gonna have these super exciting lives,
one of the things, I promise you, if we do something cool, we will totally tell you, because we know everyone outside of New York City loves hearing about New York City. It's been the weirdest experience growing up here, because I'm a military kid, so I was born in California, but I was actually raised here from the early 80s, basically. My grandmother has lived in the same apartment in Flatbush since the 70s. So for me, it's not where I was born, it's where I'm from. So when I tell people I'm from Brooklyn, they're just like, there's always a follow-up question. It's never just
well,
like,
now
cool.
It is, because a couple of years ago, Brooklyn was not cool, and people heard you lived in Brooklyn.
2 decades ago,
my God, you live in Brooklyn?
Who lives in Brooklyn?
We
now
did.
it's
We
like,
lived in
oh, Brooklyn, so cool.
Oh my God, have you been here? No. The answer to all of your questions, if I've been there, is no. And I haven't been to the Statue of Liberty, and I haven't been to Ellis Island, and I haven't been to anything. Don't ask me. I don't know any directions. If you ask me for directions, I'm going to send you wherever.
Because we're from New York.
I have no idea where I'm going.
Real New Yorkers don't go to those places. And if they do, they're being dragged by their Ohio or Florida or any Midwest or other cities that think New York City's the coolest city's place, and their relatives are dragging them there. That's pretty much what happens.
Exactly. So, no, not me. So, just like Dorothy Jane, I stay inside. But unlike Dorothy Jane, she attended church. I do not, because I'm a heathen. But she pretty much stayed indoors and attended church rather than going outside or attending social gatherings. It said that she dated occasionally, but her main focus was raising her son. In the early months of 1980, Dorothy started receiving these anonymous phone calls at her job and at her aunt's home on a regular basis, and these calls went on for months. It was a man, unidentified, and most of the time he would call up Dorothy and proclaim his love for her. But other times he would threaten to murder her. So it was
fucking creepy.
Either oh my God, I love you, or I'm gonna fucking kill you.
So fucking creepy.
Yeah.
I mean, you're supposed to have that like 2 or 3 years into your relationship, not some stalker.
Right? Or at least let me know who you are if you're gonna love me so much.
Like,
but
get through the phases first, you know?
He also admitted that he was stalking her, and proved this by providing details regarding what clothing she had on, her day-to-day activities at certain times throughout the day. Super fucking creepy.
And this is like before people gave 2 shits about women. So even if she filed a complaint, they would just be like, oh, you're hysterical.
What's the guy's name?
By the way, if you ever see me in the street and you use that word, I'm going to go absolutely nuts on you. So I hate that word. It's more offensive to me than any female name you can call me. Hysterical? No. Anyway.
Do not tell me to relax. Ever. Ever. Because I'm not going to relax.
So 2 words.
Don't
relax.
ever.
Hysterical. No.
So these calls are going on for months, but then there's one particular call that like really, really haunted her. The man called and told her that he is going to get her alone, all to himself, and dismember her into bits and pieces. So this is escalating quite a bit from I love you to I'm going to kill you, and now I'm just going to fucking chop you up in pieces.
Guy.
Super fucking creepy. So
I pray to God no one, whoever this is, I pray that this person never spawned any humans. Like, I pray that no one...
That is a creepy fucking human.
I hope no human being this human being has other little human beings running around.
And just in case you guys are wondering, when we're talking about spawning these humans, we know that we're fucked up, and I plan on not spawning any humans, so there could be no more Vickies running around anywhere. I hope that makes anybody feel better about that, because I totally think you guys probably know I'm insane by now. And I'm not even halfway through my story. She hadn't really told anybody about the calls, but at this point, with this phone call, rightfully so, she alerts her parents, and she even mentioned to them that she recognized the voice, but she could not recall the name. So the phone calls and the violent threats, now this is starting in the beginning months of 1980, so you're thinking January, February. About May of 1980, she's so scared that she signs up for karate classes and is considering buying a gun.
Wow.
A week later, on Wednesday, May 28th, 1980, she starts feeling a bit safer. You know, she's taking these steps towards, you know, self-defense. But she's still kind of, like, unnerved. So on this day, she goes to work early because she has a meeting at work. Drops her son off at her parents', and during the meeting, she notices that her coworker, his name is Conrad Bostrin. I'm terrible at names, so I really suck at names. So Conrad Bostrin looks like shit at work, has this red rash on his forearm. She, being this lovely, amazing person, because I don't give a shit what my coworkers look like, concerned for his well-being, she and another coworker named Pam Heed take him to the hospital. On the way there, she stops by her parents' house, she changes her clothes, lets her family know, hey, I'm taking my coworker, because I'm a super awesome person, and I'm taking my coworker to the hospital. So they actually end up spending the entire day and night, which I also wouldn't do, not even for...
That is so nice. Like,
I wouldn't even do that for some people that I love. Like, I'm not spending the whole day in the hospital. It's fucking gross, and you end up contracting shit
I don't
from
think
the
anyone
ER.
loves the hospital, so that just proves
And I'm going to be a nurse, and I don't love the hospital. That gross.
Really proves how great Dorothy was.
She was a really good person. So she
I've never met a Dorothy I've never liked. And it's weird because it's such a not popular name these days.
Guys, name your kids Dorothy because I'll never have one.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you have a kid named Dorothy, email us and we'll talk about
Yeah, I would. That's one of those classic names that should come back.
And because my favorite movie is, well, I don't think anybody knows this, it's The Wizard of Oz. So there we go. Mm-hmm. It's always been my favorite movie. But super awesome person, Dorothy. She spends all day and night at the hospital with him. And Pam. Pam is also awesome for doing that.
Yep.
It's like 11 p.m. And he's finally getting discharged from the hospital with the prescription. Turns out he got bitten by a black widow spider.
Whoa.
Which is one of my biggest fears. I fucking hate spiders. Anything with more than 4 legs
and
is
I'm
unnatural.
the total opposite.
No, you're not scared of anything. Kristi is fearless.
Yeah, except one thing, but we'll talk about that.
We're not going to talk about that because, once you tell people you're scared of something, we're going to get emails of that, and I'm not going to do it.
And
I'm
not just that, it's definitely something that we'll discuss later in the podcast because it is, it's happened before. There is a profile serial killer that has done this exact thing that I'm horrified of.
So we'll save that before we
discuss. So
later on. Today we're just sticking to daddy issues. So before leaving the hospital, Dorothy goes to the bathroom. Pam waits with Conrad, and must stress this as a detail later in the story. This is the only time that Dorothy is separated from Pam. The entire time they're in the hospital, she's with her. Except for this time where she goes to the bathroom. Right after she does that, she insists that they go to the pharmacy right next door to the hospital to get his prescription filled. She tells Pam, take him to the pharmacy. I'm gonna go get my car from the parking lot. I don't want him walking in this condition. Spider bites are crazy, so of course he's probably feeling like shit and really weak.
Oh yeah.
So they're in the pharmacy for like 5 minutes while Dorothy goes and gets the car, and they assume we're gonna be outside and she's gonna be waiting with the car.
Right.
So they walk there, they wait there. She doesn't show up. She's not outside. She's taking forever. They decide we're gonna walk to the space where her car was parked. Suddenly, as they're walking, her car is driving towards them at an incredibly high speed. Lights are on full beam, partially blinding them, and they're like waving their arms in the air, trying to get her attention, like, hey, like you're driving straight towards us.
Yeah, and I've actually experienced that. A friend of ours, during the 4th of July a few years ago, her, I won't say the name, but she is a mutual friend, and her now ex-boyfriend, who is infamously an asshole, did pretty much the same thing to us.
It's gotta be one of the scariest things ever, because it's like one of those things where you don't know what to do and you freeze, and it's like you're thinking about the fact that you're gonna
that was horrifying. It was one of the scariest moments of my life, because I'm like, this person can literally kill me right now. And you don't think about that. You're just thinking, what the hell's going on?
What am I going to do to not die right now?
Right.
And you're like frozen in that spot.
It was and
that's essentially like what they're doing. They're literally sitting there and like, you think, if it was me, I would totally jump out of the way. You don't. You don't jump out of the way.
It's this, you would think so, but you're just in such this weird panic. So I can't even imagine him being sick with the spider bite.
Right, and you're sitting there waving your arms, flailing around.
Roll around in a car, and this happens. It's nuts.
And so they're doing that. They're like waving their arms in the air, trying to get her attention. The driver never stops, but the vehicle ends up swerving past them erratically and makes this super sharp turn out of the parking lot. So they're really confused by what just happened, of course, but they think maybe an emergency came up and she has to go get her son. Right. So they actually wait at the hospital for 2 hours, thinking that she might come back.
That's insane.
She doesn't ever come back. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning. She doesn't come back. So they get worried and they decide to call her parents and ask if they've had any contact with her, but they hadn't. So at this point, that's when Dorothy's
So we're making the assumption at this point this guy abducted her and this was him driving.
Exactly, because at this point it's like, I mean, I don't think they know about the phone calls, but we know.
We know as passing at the evidence, we're assuming at this point she's not trying to run over her friends. We're assuming the 5 minutes she was disconnected from her friends at the hospital, this guy somehow took her into her own car and drove towards their friends and took this woman away and never to be seen again. That's essentially what we're assuming at this point.
Well, it gets a little bit crazier. So at this point, they report her missing. At 5 a.m., Dorothy's car was discovered up in flames in a back alleyway about 10 miles from the hospital, but Dorothy's body isn't in there. It's just her car. So they, do some search parties, because in the 80s, that's what you did. Search parties. They were conducted for days. She's not found.
Wow.
Her parents get worried. And then Dorothy's mother receives a phone call from a man saying that he murdered her.
Huh. So he confesses to the mother. What a sick fuck.
Because, let's call the mom and torture her because she's not already
Yeah, because it's not enough
tortured.
that she's already missing and she's petrified. Ugh.
So they call the police at this point when the call was made. But lovely 80s logic. The cops actually tell them, don't release any details about her disappearance. Don't say anything about the phone call. Don't tell the media. You guys need to have an upper hand and steer clear of false confessions. So don't say anything. Your daughter's just missing.
See, and that's one of the reasons, like, I'm super terrified to be a parent. Because if somebody said that to me, I wouldn't care if it was whichever president of the United States is saying it at that time. I would give him a giant middle finger, or her. Sorry, it's going to happen one day.
It'll happen.
Give them the giant middle finger and do what I have to do.
Yeah, it's like, fuck you, I'm telling whatever I want.
I think our mentality as a society has changed so much since then, because back in the day, people would listen to the cops like that. Like, now everyone posts something on Twitter. They record cops saying things to them. Yeah. So it's just like, for us, it makes no sense when we hear it. But the 80s was a completely different time. We were either born at this point, or we were minus as far as our parents. Some wise people have explained to me how the things were, and I have family that were in the military, so they know how things were at the time.
Like you just did. You just trusted what they said, and anybody, which I'm sure anybody listening to this has some sort of obsession with this. When you hear about these cases that went on in the 70s and 80s, most of them had some sort of fucked up police work in it. Almost every freaking case, because they probably could have been caught early if they just fucking listened to somebody.
The cops were not trained with that kind of stuff back in the day.
Serial killers were like a pedophile. All that stuff was just like new terminology.
Yeah,
like,
and I'm sure everyone that is listening to this, we're gonna have a recommendation on our website, www.theeerieamericas.com. We are gonna put up like our recommendations of books and of things to watch on Netflix, because that's what we do all the time.
We talk about all the documentaries we watch.
Anyone that's watched Mindhunters, they'll tell you they didn't even have a name for a serial killer, or a name for someone that's a stalker, or a name for...
They didn't even know what stalking was. Like, they didn't know any of this. Like, in the 80s, there was no such thing as stalking. You called up the cops and said you had a stalker.
Everybody at the time basically walked around in sunglasses, and
you got in people's cars, you trusted your neighbors, your kids went out on loan.
You hitchhiked everywhere.
Which is why, like, nowadays you hear about all these stories about the Bundys where they got people in the cars, and they're like, how would you get in the car? That's just the time. Yeah. You trusted people, you got in the car. You didn't have a phone
to get Uber. There's these things that have... There are the day-to-day things in our lives that we take for granted, that we don't consider, because now we can say, well, I would have done this and I would have done that. It was a different lifestyle. And not just that, if Dorothy's mother is anything like Dorothy, because Dorothy was a notoriously sweet, docile, nice person, her mother would be having the same attitude and say, okay, they're going to find her, they're going to do the right thing, we're going to figure this out. She had her trust in the system.
Which explains why they actually end up listening to the cops. And
as half minority and minority women, I'm a halvesy, but we do not trust the police. So, it's also that kind of attitude. Like, for us, we grew up in a time in Brooklyn when no one snitched. Nobody talks to the cops. It's not.
You don't talk.
Everyone kept their mouth shut. You would read something in the newspaper, even if you had a tip, you shut up. There's a lot of distrust in the police too, and I feel like a lot of people at this time also that could have helped probably felt the same way. Probably. And there's that hesitation of, do I give people that aren't going to do anything with this information anything?
Right.
It was one of those odd times where everyone was just like always in this like cloud of doubt, and that's kind of what it seems like on a criminal level. I'm not talking about the 80s. Everyone walked around, listening to Duran Duran and buying crappy Camaros and going to tennis clubs. I'm not saying that's all of the 80s, but on a criminal level, this was very, very amateur at best at the time.
Yeah, they didn't even have like task force. They didn't have any of that. So when they get told by the cops, like, hey, don't say anything, they don't. But then a week goes by, there's no results. So Dorothy's parents start to lose hope. So they decide, fuck you, we're going to report this. So they call up a local newspaper called the Santa Ana Register and offer $2,500, which at that time is a lot more than $2,500, to anyone who will provide information leading to her whereabouts, dead or alive. So now that the story is in the public eye, there's this editorial manager from the newspaper called Pat Riley, and she receives, I think it's a she, but Pat Riley receives a phone call on June 12, 1980, which at this point now it's been a couple weeks that Dorothy's been missing. The nameless caller calls up the editorial manager and goes, I killed her. I killed Dorothy Scott. She was my love. I caught her cheating with another man. She denied having someone else. I killed her. So, you
So
know,
she
the cops
must-
do nothing, say nothing, they get nothing. The minute that this is in the newspaper, boom, there's a phone call.
Shocker. But you know what? Honestly, I was wondering, like, what would be the tipping point where this guy would risk
Right.
the risk of being in a public place, stealing her in front of Tweek. Maybe he was leaning into her, and that drove him nuts, because if she was somebody that just took care of her kid and didn't have a relationship and
she
wasn't
could've,
around
like, she
another
did
man,
date
and this guy is
occasionally.
so insane that he thinks that he's in love with her, and he
That's
loves her
his
so
love,
much that he
so
wants to
she's
chop her
cheating.
into pieces.
Right.
So seeing any man touch her would probably drive him insane.
Right.
So maybe he saw something like that.
Maybe
and
she went on a date recently because she did date occasionally, or maybe he saw nothing and he made this all up in his head. You don't know,
because this guy's
Fucking
clearly
lunatic.
clueless with what real life is.
Right.
So you don't want to take
Might
anything he
slightly-
might be thinking, but I like to kind of put myself in that perspective of the person and just kind of be
Right.
like, maybe that's what he saw and that triggered
And he
that
just made it
moment.
up. Yeah, he just-
or maybe that was the plan, was just that night I'm going to get her regardless. Who knows? You know what I mean?
Or
Like,
he's just one of those people that I'm gonna blame the victim. So hey, she's cheating on me, and that's why I killed her.
Yep.
Yeah, could be that. So then he went on to relate intimate details about the night of her disappearance that wasn't released to the public. So he acknowledged the fact that her coworker had a spider bite. He said that she was wearing a red scarf. But the thing that he says that's kind of like really, really fucking creepy is he states that Dorothy called him from the hospital hours before she disappeared. So now you have to really think about this guy's mental state, because it's like, how much are you making up of this little relationship in your head that you're gonna tell the cops, oh yeah, she totally called me from the hospital. She didn't call you. And like
She didn't have your
and
number.
the
She didn't
cops
know
actually know that you didn't call her because she was with that woman Pam the whole time.
Homie.
She never left it.
homie, newsflash, if you're somehow still alive and you're listening to this, you are fucking insane, because Dorothy never called you because she had no fucking clue who you are, and that's that.
Right, like how the fuck would she have called you if she didn't know who you were? When did she call you when she was with Pam the whole time, and with what? Because there were no cell phones. Where did she go to call you?
You're gonna step out of a payphone to go talk to your stalker? No way.
Yeah, I remember payphones.
Yeah.
So, you know, now...
Yeah, look those up, kids.
Oh, yeah, there were things. There were call phones and they have
There's
boards.
like one in Midtown Manhattan left. I think that's about it.
nostalgia?
Yeah.
Maybe he was smarter than we think, because now, even with those details of that night proving that he was there, now he's throwing this detail didn't happen, and I was like, well, was he really there? Because that's basically...
So the cops took it as like it could be a lie because he made this one lie.
But
so it makes everything
they were under the impression, they're like, we're pretty sure she didn't make this call. And primarily because she was with Pam the whole day, and the only time they got separated was in the bathroom for a couple seconds.
Right.
So now, after receiving... So now, you know, the mom also got a call in the beginning. So after she received that initial call, right after the disappearance, she went on to receive a call every Wednesday, which is also the day that we release our podcast every week. Every Wednesday for 4 years. 4 fucking years this guy calls every Wednesday to torture that mother.
This is insane. Like, and it's so crazy because these days that would be such a simple tracking system. If you know definitively at this time every week, it would be such a simple solution now. And like, it just goes to show you, like, you can't get away with shit anymore because there's so many ways of getting caught.
So now there's some...
Don't do it is what I'm saying.
Yeah, just don't fucking do it. If
Make
you were
everyone's
contemplating doing it, don't fucking do it
Make
now.
everyone's life easier, including yourself.
Just don't do it.
Don't do it.
So now, this is basically like when I was doing the research for this caller would never call when the father was home. It only called the mother, and what he would do is he would call, and sometimes he would say, "Hi, you related to Dorothy?" And when she would reply yes, he would be like, "I've got her," and hang up.
So
or other days
he pretended he wouldn't recognize her voice.
Right. Or he would call and say, "Hey, did you related to Dorothy?" "Yes, I killed her," and then hang up. But I read in like certain, articles that he never called when the father was around. I think he was afraid to get the father on the phone, because he's obviously a fucking punk.
Daddy issues too.
Yeah, he definitely has daddy issues. So that's what he would do. So then the mother, of course, tells the police, and they install a voice recording device, hoping they can track the call. But back in the 80s, you had to literally be on that phone for like minutes for them to track the phone call. So of course they were never able to track it, because he would hang up the minute that he would just call up, say, "Hey, I've got her, I killed her," and he would hang up. So it was not enough to track it.
And even then, maybe not. But back then it was impossible. And like, you can't keep somebody on the phone who's a psychopath who just says 4 things to you and hangs up.
Right. So there's like no conversation to be had there. So now, this is August of 1984. Dorothy's been missing for 4 years. A construction worker discovers dog remains at Santa Ana Canyon Road, which is approximately 13 miles away from the hospital that they took Conrad to.
Wow.
So he discovers these dog remains, and then when it's being dug up, they unearthed another set of remains that belonged to Dorothy, along with a turquoise ring and a wristwatch that had stopped at 12:30 a.m. on May 29th, 1980, which was about an hour after her disappearance. An autopsy was conducted, but the medical examiner was unable to provide a cause of death due to the state of the remains. Of course, they know that foul play is involved. So over the years, there've really been no conclusive breakthroughs. There is circumstantial evidence that does point to someone. His name is Mike Butler, who was the brother of a female coworker that worked alongside her. In some articles, I also hear that because there was this shop that her parents once owned, and there was a lot of other things in the area, he might have been someone that worked relatively close to the shop that might have been able to see her while he was at work, but I haven't really found too much to confirm that.
Got it.
But that's also could have been a possibility, like if he's working somewhere where you work close to or took your car or something like that, he could have easily followed
and that's
you.
such an easy way to disguise it, because if you see the car, you're like, oh, we work in the same lot,
right,
or
exactly.
we have the same schedule. It's so easy to dismiss those things. Like, I was joking around today with like my husband Charlie and I went to the gym prior today for one of the first times ever in the new year. Woohoo!
Hey,
and
I haven't done it yet.
And so we went to the gym, and I binge watched that show You on Netflix.
Oh, I saw it recently, and it's so fucking creepy.
Yeah, so it's kind of parallel to this kind of situation, except he was across the street when I left the gym first, and then he followed. So he's texting me, and I'm like, hey, let's meet. I'm on this block. So he's across the street from me, and I'm watching him. He has zero notice of me, because of course,
watching him.
as soon as he's out of the gym, he's eating something, because my husband has to eat every 4 hours like an infant, and so
and he's skinny, so,
and he's all boned.
Fuck you a little
So
bit. Still love you though.
we love you, Charles. Anyway, so we're across the street, and he's walking across the street from me about 10 paces or so. So I take a picture of him because I could tell he's not finding me, and I'm like, I feel like the guy in You, and that's like literally what I sent him, because I was just like, this is so easy. He had zero clue that I was watching him. He had zero clue. He was busy eating his food, living his life.
Their phone, and you never know when they're taking a picture,
now.
and they could totally be fucking recording you this whole time. You have no idea.
So
and then people are also oblivious, so you're like on your phone and not realizing that someone follows you, unless you're like me, who is super paranoid. Absolutely. And I always think everybody's following me.
Yeah. I walk around all the time with that whole 90s stranger danger kind of mentality. Like, that's just who I am. Like, I'm one of the most friendly people you'll meet, but when you first meet me, you might be like, wow, she's a little standoffish, because I'm just trying to, like, figure you out. Like, I'm
not nice, and I'm never gonna be nice, and I'm never gonna trust you. I trust no one.
You know what you're like? You're like an M&M. You have a hard shell, and then you go on the inside, and she's all chocolate.
And then I go on the inside, and I'm all chocolate with daddy.
Yeah, exactly. Unless you have a peanut allergy, because she's the peanut kind. So
who the hell wants to just eat a regular M&M?
I mean,
besides
just
my
have some
boyfriend.
chocolate. Just has it. It's what it is. You're eating dye and chocolate. That's what it is.
Well, I want some
with a hard
peanut
case.
in my dye and chocolate.
Maybe a little shelly case. That's about.
No,
so you're getting it for texture, essentially.
I really want some peanut.
So yeah, Mike Butler.
Actually, well, I don't know if this is good or bad. He actually died in 2014 of pancreatic cancer, which is, like, good for you, but he also didn't face justice. And something that I read in an article was saying that he might have been part of some cult activity, and that's why they found dog remains when they found Dorothy's remains. But yeah, Mike Butler died. Fuck you.
Fortunate that he died and didn't get caught.
Exactly.
That's
because one of the other things besides being that is that according to acquaintances, because fuckers like that don't have friends, he had an unhealthy obsession with Dorothy. So, he did it. I'm just gonna say that.
Yeah.
There is no proof of that, but I'm saying he fucking did it.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, there was...
Sorry, Butler family, but...
Oh, yeah, but we think he...
Mike Butler
think he
was the murderer. Or Michael, whatever, because, Michael's scarier.
Yeah, Michael's scarier. Like Michael Myers?
Yeah. I mean, my friend Michael, I call him Michael because he prefers it, but I just changed to Spanish and he's Miguel because I find Michael creepy. And like it's also the Halloween guy's fault. And there's so many Michaels in the world, so I'm sorry for anyone listening named Michael.
We're gonna rename you.
Yeah, you're gonna be Mike, or I'm gonna come up with a new nickname for you, or I'm gonna ask you your middle name because A, there's too many Michaels, and B,
Latinos like to give everybody a nickname.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, though, there's, like, literally almost no evidence tying him to there besides him being creepy and being obsessed with her. They don't have enough evidence to arrest him or even consider him a suspect. And Dorothy's family, unfortunately, of course, so heartbroken, they try to separate themselves from the entire situation. So they kind of, like, don't really talk about it. But on April 23rd, 1994, which is Dorothy's birthday. Her father passes away at the age of 69.
Aww.
8 years later, in 2002, her mother passes away. So they pass away without ever getting any answers.
Any justice. Well,
But
I think justice.
her son, who has, because he was raised by great people, because they raised Dorothy, so they must be great. He did have a meaningful life. You know, he grew up really, really well. Of course.
Do we know his son's name?
Sean.
Shout out to you, Sean.
And
your mother's not forgotten.
Your mom is awesome. But he still pursues justice for his mom, so he's still like keeping up with the case.
Good.
But it's been about.
We got your back. Let us know what we can do.
Right? Can we be one of those podcasts that leads to them finding out whether the fuck Mike Butler did
That
this?
would be cool. I would be down to do some investigations. That would be really cool.
Right. But it's been close to 39 years since her abduction and murder, and it's still unsolved, unfortunately.
Wow, that's a crazy story.
We still think Mike Butler did it.
So that's the case of Miss Dorothy Jane Scott, and I hope the Scott family finds some semblance of peace. We know that this topic is pretty tough, and it's heavy, and we want people to walk away, even though we're gonna crack jokes and this that we still want people to understand that someone's life was impacted by this, multiple people's lives, and the police that took all their time investigating, and there's so much that goes into this when people disappear in the community. You'd be shocked, like the amount of people that come out of their communities and volunteer during these situations. Like, props to all of you out there. Like, you guys are badasses. But as Brooklynites, even though I always hated that, like, I feel like it's not cool enough, but...
Well, we're from Brooklyn, so we're super cool now, so we're Brooklynites.
As Brooklynites, anyone that either was raised here or lived here long enough or has friends that are from Brooklyn, our saying is, who does that? So it's a very Brooklyn thing. You're telling a story, and it's a crazy story, whether it happened to you, whether it happened to a coworker, whether it happened to, fulano, fulana. That means for our non-Spanish speaking people, that's kind of like John or Jane Doe, You're telling a story, and you end with, who does that? The segment we want to do. So at the end of the show, we're going to do a who does that segment.
Who does that?
Who does that? Who does that? Who does that? Boy, do I have a doozy for you in the new year. So this actually happened.
Florida.
Yes.
Everything happens. Sorry to any Floridians listening to this podcast. Yeah, my
mother and my brother are in Florida. And Florida is, I don't care what anyone says. I live there. I will say it. It's America's basement. Like, just from the humidity to the crazy people that invented smoking bath salts to anything that has come out of Florida. There's always crazy stories in Florida, and here is one for you. So a group of 4 men, the night before New Year's Eve, had decided, were accused, I'm sorry, because here it's innocent until proven guilty in America.
Unless you're us and we just think
or you're really poor.
Or you're a minority. Or you're a
Oh, well, these are actually a minority. These 4 men are accused of stealing $500,000 in tequila, specifically Patron.
I mean,
so,
Patron's great.
According to CBS Local Miami, sheriff deputies in Florida have recovered $500,000 in stolen tequila. Hillsborough Sheriff spokesman Danny Alvarez said in a news release that on Sunday night, a truck driver hauling the load of tequila had stopped for dinner at a Tampa truck stop when he noticed the trailer was no longer attached to his truck. So... you're sitting there eating, and you're like, holy hell, where the fuck did my where's my go? Supplies? Like, oh my God, my boss is going to murder me.
You also knew you had $500,000 worth of
yeah,
tequila.
I mean, you're responsible for that as the truck driver, so that must have been petrifying. Like, I can't even...
Also, who didn't hear them stealing a fucking trailer?
I have zero idea. So, it says deputies began searching and found a semi-trailer at a nearby intersection. So, these guys didn't even go really far.
You guys suck at this. You didn't make it anywhere.
Ever. Yeah. Did you just see a trailer that said Patron and you were like, yes, let's do this? There's no other explanation for this.
I feel like that was the thought process. No thought went behind it.
Because you don't go after you think about this mission. You see the Italian Job. You see all these movies that's like all these spy shows. You don't stop at a nearby intersection. Yeah. So where they watched 4 men transferring the cases of tequila to another box truck. Alvarez says that the deputies moved in. The men had transferred over 20 cases from the fully loaded truck. That was worth $507,000. Sorry, I'm wrong about that. I'm really bad at math. You're gonna learn this. How do I say this?
It's $507,105.
There we go. Woohoo! Okay. Yay! Math dyslexia. Boop boop. So yeah, over $500,000 worth of tequila. So that's definitely grand larceny.
Right?
So
but you realize, like, you're gonna go to jail for stealing fucking Patron. Like, can you imagine just, like, sitting in jail and, like, you get there and you're like, so what are you in for? And, like, I murdered somebody. What are you in for? I stole a lot of Patron.
And don't get me wrong, we are Latins. We love our Patron, but Patron is like what you drink in college as a Latin woman. Like, it's not
It's what
the
I drink
best.
when there's nothing else available.
It's not the best tequila. There is literally better tequila sitting in my closet right now. So it's just insane that that's going to be on 4 Men's Records, and they were all Hispanic. Yeah, but beyond that, they're Floridians. So that's something that we have to come and
cue
expect
all of
here.
the angry emails. From
Yes, sorry, Florida. I'm gonna stick by what I said, and I can say this because I live there. It's not like
I'm gonna say it because I don't care.
There we go.
Florida's weird.
But I've experienced.
I do go to Florida though because you guys have Harry Potter World and Universal, so I'm always gonna go to Florida because I would love Harry Potter.
And this is where she and I differ. Like, she's all about like Disney and Game of Thrones, and I'm like, no. So I
literally, that's all you get out of Kristi when it comes to Harry Potter or Game of Thrones. She's like, no.
No. I was a Lord of the Rings fan in high school, and that's like the extent of my nerd fest with that kind of stuff. Yes, you're all nerds, all of you. The fact that on a Sunday night everyone stays home and watch Game of Thrones to me is just absurd. I'm gonna say
what else would I do on a Sunday? I don't go anywhere. I'm gonna go to the Statue of Liberty. Would that make you feel better?
I'm gonna let this out now just to get it out of the way. I am one of the 10 people on the planet that don't watch Game of Thrones. So when it starts, thank whoever you believe that this is the series finale, right? Like, we're finally over this, right?
This is the last season. I'm so upset about
Thank you. Thank you,
I'm just
TV
going to find
gods.
something else to watch.
Thank you, TV gods, because if this one more person around the world tells me to watch the show, I'm going to kill them. Like, I will literally be...
If Kristi ever gets arrested for murder, we're going to have to edit this out of the podcast.
Vicky's going to have to host herself and tell my story because I'm going to kill somebody. If one more person tells me to watch... How about this? People that don't watch Game of Thrones... Email me, and we will collectively do something together that night. We'll pick a Netflix, Hulu, and just universally just give them extra $10 or whatever they get from Netflix to just find something, or we'll watch something live together. I don't care. But anyone that doesn't watch a Game of Thrones, feel free to email us, the Eerie Americas at gmail.com. Please feel free. If you have a problem with the fact...
So all 2 of the people who are going to email us about Game of Thrones could all hang out with Kristi on Sunday while she edits.
Thank you so much for checking out our first podcast. There's a ton of people to thank. So we have for me anyway, I have a real love-hate relationship with New York City. I think most New Yorkers do, but the one upside to living here is all the insanely talented group of individuals and creative people that we get to be blessed to meet and encounter, and it includes helping out with this podcast. So
much support. Marlon Almonte, thank you so much for making our incredible website, theeerieamericas.com. Everybody go check it out.
He's amazing. He is also an amazing DJ. He has his own DJ company, Touch of Sound. Top rated on the Knot for years in a row. Just super talented. It's not even fair. Shout out to him, to Nikki, his wife, who I'm sure had to deal with him being on the website and not paying attention to Sophia. So shout out to you guys too. We also have to thank Jessica LaFlamme, the person with the coolest last name on the planet. When you first told me that was her name, I was like, that's not her real name, because like that name is just too badass. Like, it's just too cool. Changing our last name to LaFlamme. Yeah, if I get to rename me, I hope you don't mind, Jess, I'm gonna take your last name, LaFlamme. And so. I tagged her in our photo on Instagram of our logo. So she's that if super you ever talented. Need, I also want to personally thank my awesome co-host for making that really, really dope intro music. It was actually surprisingly easy thanks to Soundation.com. I found that website. Not an ad, we just really like you. Yeah, it was great. We also have to thank my good friend Aaron Brandis. He also helped me make it sound audible. That was super helpful. So thank you, Aaron. You are the best too. And I gotta thank Vicky as well, because without her, I would just be sitting here talking to myself like a crazy person about serial killers. She still talks to herself. I'm not even here. This is a lie. She's Skyping. Yeah, but she makes me less insane. So yeah, it's really awesome to have someone to share this with. Otherwise, you really kind of feel weird, which is how I felt my whole life. So it's awesome to have someone else to share this with, and all of you that are listening. So just thank you, everybody. Yeah, for thank you for being the fearless freaks that we are, that can be here and be honest and admit that we're into the dark, and it's okay. But we would ask that you subscribe. Give us a 5-star review if you like what you hear. Listen in every Wednesday. And before I forget, at the end of every episode, I'll probably remind you, but we are going to be putting photographs on our Instagram, the Eerie Americas, of all of our cases, any pictures that we find, just so you guys can get familiar with it. So please check it out every Wednesday. Bye. Bye.